So we're back working on this 2013 Ram with the 3.6 V6 in it and the P0642 code, 5-volt reference 1 getting pulled to ground, and it affects the throttle body, the accelerator pedal, the crank sensor, and oil pressure sensor. I've got the 10 wire or 10 cavity 9 wire plug at the back of the intake manifold unplugged. I talked to the customer this morning. He says the oil pressure, he said the engine oil cooler was replaced twice, the last time fairly recently, and it was after that time that this problem arose where the engine would go into limp mode due to the throttle body errors. The oil pressure sensor and the engine oil temperature sensor come with that oil cooler assembly, and I'm going to plug it back in to see if the problem returns this morning. Just curious. So there's the connector at the back of the intake. You can see it's not retained either. There's a retaining clip, which makes it easier for me to get at it, so I can't complain. I've plugged it back in. We're going to start it up and see if our problem returns. Well, we're going to let it run outside for a few minutes and see if the problem comes back. Maybe even take it for a road test, but not go very far. I'm beginning to hate this truck. So it's been running for an hour outside here. I'm going to take it for a road test. Now it's possible that the wiring from that connector at the back of that intake manifold might have been compromised, and me moving that wire might have inadvertently fixed it, because it's not acting up right now. We're going to go for a road test, but we're not going to go very far because coming back at 20 kilometers an hour is a pain in the butt. You can see the speed signal, or the TPS1 and TPS2 voltage have been pretty consistent. Remember, this dropout is normal. It's a diagnostic glitch. So there you go, almost 15,000 frames of data. 10-kilometer road test, runs beautiful. So was it, or is it, a compromised wire under the intake manifold going to the oil pressure sensor? I don't know. We're going to have to pull the intake manifold off, and we're going to put a set of plugs in it if necessary at the same time, considering 3 of them are under the intake manifold. And looks like I'm going to have to put some gas in this thing because it's pretty much empty. So this is the first new one that was put on that apparently leaked for some reason. So it was replaced with a second one, and they're both supposed to be original equipment. Chrysler genuine parts. And of course, as you can see, they come with the oil temp sensor and the oil pressure sensor. So we're going to use this oil pressure sensor out of this one because it's basically new. And hopefully I find something compromised on the wiring back there, because I did plug the connector back in and drive it for another 10-15 kilometers and it's never skipped a beat again. So it might have moved the harness that goes from here to that, 10 wire plug, 10 terminal plug back there. But we're going to pull the intake off, and I asked the customer if he changed the spark plugs when it was apart the last 2 times, and he said no. So we're going to have a look at the plugs in there, and customers brought me new plugs in case we need them. So let's get started. So it's always a good idea to disconnect the negative battery cable before you start some major job like this. Disconnect all the wiring connectors, the throttle body connector, the cool air temp sensor connector, I guess that's a map sensor, looks like it, and the vacuum hoses. Now there's 2 brace nuts here and 2 brace nuts back there, and the bolts here, looks like 5/16. So let's get started. So there's the intake off. There are 4 short bolts and 3 long bolts. You can thread them up into the plastic a little bit, they'll stay there. Lift this side up and slide the studs out from those retaining brackets. Now you can see the 3 coils underneath there. We're going to pull one of those coils out and have a look at the plug and see if it's been changed. Now it looks like we're going to have to take the lower intake off. So disconnect all the injector harnesses. You can disconnect the coils on this side and put that harness back towards the back. push these quick release tabs on the fuel line and till they release, and then pull it off. But be careful, because there's going to be residual fuel pressure behind there, so put a rag over it to catch it so it doesn't spray in the eyes. Disconnect the harness. We're going to tie this vacuum hose. I found this vacuum hose here just laying down in the valley down here. I don't know where it's supposed to go. We're going to have to figure that out. But it wasn't connected to anything. I'm not sure if it's a vacuum hose or a purge hose. I'll figure it out. Well, there's the intake off, and I'm disappointed. They never even put new gaskets in it when they did this. I should have ordered the gaskets just to be safe, but I didn't. I assumed they would have changed the gaskets one of the times that the manifold was off. I'm not taking a chance on these gaskets. So there's a look at that oil pressure sender. It's down in the bottom of the valley there, the bottom sender. I disconnected the connector from it. Let me lean in here. And there is a little bit of oil in the connector, but not enough that I think it would affect it. And the wiring harness doesn't look like it's rubbed on anything. The back of the firewall, where it's supposed to be attached, is, well, you know what that vacuum hose is? I think that's a vent from the, you see it back there? I think that's just a vent from the transmission or transfer case, or the combination of both, because that's it running down there. Yeah, so it doesn't connect to anything other than maybe sticking it up here. So it was laying on the engine, and this doesn't hurt anything. But I don't see any place where that wire could be compromised, because everything against the firewall is insulated. So even if it was rubbing on the firewall, it's insulated. Oh well. I'm going to change the sender, put new gaskets in it, check the spark plugs. Oh man, this is uncomfortable. So these plugs are not original unless the dealer or manufacturer uses Champion. This one's pretty worn, so they've been in a while. That's unusual. I don't know if these are platinum, but that's what we're putting in. Let me see which. I recommended these NGK, and these are iridium. So I like to put a little bit of copper never sees on the threads on any spark plug that goes into aluminum, but that's just my opinion. I've been doing it since forever. So the spark plug torque is 13 foot-pounds. Put some silicone dielectric grease on the tip of the plug and around this seal to help seal it. This back spark plug that I took out was loose actually. I didn't feel any resistance when I went to loosen it. Plug the intake ports with some paper toweling just in case you drop something. So I suspect it was a flat rate tech who worked on this, changing these spark plugs, because there's the 3 on the left side, which are under the intake manifold, and there's one from the right side. Iridium. So somebody changed the right 3 spark plugs and didn't bother with the left side because they're under the manifold, and said, screw it. If it comes back with a misfire, we'll claim warranty on a part. Unfortunately, that happens. So as I said, the torque is 13 foot-pounds. I get a chance to use my brand new snap-on torque wrench. Oh, I hit 13.2. I'll use the electric ratchet to take them out. Yeah, somebody changed 3 of the spark plugs that are easy to change. These ones are actually good, but we're going to put their other 3 new ones in so they all match. So there's the sending unit installed. I had to remove the temperature one above it because I couldn't get a wrench on it. Couldn't get a box end wrench, couldn't get a socket on it, had to use a 1 1/16 open end wrench. Put pipe thread sealant on the connectors, on the threads I should say, and dielectric grease on the terminals. I blew the connector out with brake cleans and air. And that oil temp sensor connector, the secondary lock was broken, so I secured it with a tie wrap, 2 tie wraps. So we're waiting for the intake gaskets. The intake gasket surface is clean. We're going to put it back together. So there's the intake gasket set from Felpro, upper and lower. You can buy the upper separately for when you're doing just the plugs. And there's the manifold ready to be reinstalled with new seals. So put some dielectric grease on the seals, and make sure you take your tissue paper rags out of the intake manifold before you put this back on. So there's the lower intake manifold installed, the fuel lines hooked up, wiring hoses or wiring lines, wiring connectors plugged in. Get this out of the way. I'm going to drop the upper intake manifold on. Now the studs on this side need to be located. I'm going to try a little trick here because that bolt's too high. It's going to interfere with the plenum. So put an elastic band between those 2 bolts and it holds them from falling down. And then we get a look on this side. Studs in and drop the manifold on top of this. Seems good. There it goes. Now we can take these off. Yeah, that's it. We'll run those in with the air ratchet. What happened to my socket? There it is. Start in the middle. And work towards the ends. Take this extension off. Careful not to over torque them. Okay, I'm going to get the torque spec for that. So the spec for the upper intake bolts is 10 Newton meters and the lower is 12. I'll convert that to inch pounds for you. So there's the upper intake back installed and all the hoses and connectors reconnected. I secured this where it was running over top of the bracket here with a tie wrap. This goes to the air temp sensor, map sensors plugged in. These 2 little 6mm nuts, they're probably like 5-6 Newton meters. I just tighten them up with a 1/4 inch drive. And a ratcheting box end back there, you can't get a torque wrench in. They're not that critical. And we're ready to put the air cleaner on. Now that connector over there, the locking mechanism was broken, imagine that. So I put a tie wrap around both halves of the connector to hold it together. And we're ready to put the intake plenum on. Or not the plenum, the air induction back on. So we're going to go into the scanner, clear the codes on this. Chrysler products, you have to do this key on, engine off. And it's a lot quicker than Nissan. "16 controllers cleared." We're just going to go into the engine and check for codes. No codes. Going to go into data, throttle data, and to speed it up, I'm going to customize the data list. And Snap-on's loading all the other data lists, so you can pick and choose data parameters from each list. So we're going to select this and deselect all, pick engine speed, APP1, APP2, TPS1, TPS2, and we'll go throttle body and graph it. And do a list view, just slightly different graphs. Then we're going to start it and take it for a road test. Well, I'm going to let it run in the service bay while I check the fluid levels. Then I'm going to take it outside and take it for a road test. Well, it's running fine other than this stupid chime because I haven't got the seatbelt on, but it's going to be running out of gas, so I'm going to go to the service station and put some gas in it. I hope not. Well, just got back from about a 35-kilometer road test. Put gas in the vehicle. No problems, runs fine. And TPS2 voltage never dropped below 0.992. These are auto ranging graphs. Of course, APP2 does have that diagnostic glitch in it, so it is normal for it to show a minimum of 0.00. So we're going to call this one fixed. I wish we knew exactly what fixed it. It could have been that oil pressure sensor. It could have been the wiring harness compromised somewhere and me just manipulating, moving it, fixed it. Let's hope it stays fixed. I secured the harness in multiple places. So hopefully it keeps fixed. Thanks for watching.